on the west coast of the U.S. Good evening, early evening to those of you in Europe. I know that I've got quite a number of people from Europe and also the Middle East that are going to tune into this now, and I know that Asia will be catching this on replay. So please do feel free to engage with myself and my special guest over the weekend on replay. Expecting a lot of activity there, and hopefully these topics that we're going to talk about today will trigger some interest that you want to go deeper on. And my special guest that I'll introduce in just a moment, and I were constantly on the LinkedIn platform, and we'll be very happy to go as deep as you want to go into any particular topic here. So with that, I'm really pleased today to have a very special guest that does very unique work. You're going to see that come out over the course of the next hour. We're going to talk about what that uniqueness is and relevancy. My network loves to see relevancy. If you're not relevant, you're out, and that's kind of people can hire and fire me, and I know that my special guest feels the same way as well. So if you want to see a lot of relevance and unique perspectives, then just tune in and engage for the next hour. Please let us know where you're tuning in from, and we'll give you a shout out, and then tee up, of course, any questions, comments. You want to take a shot at either of us, feel free to do that as well. We're wide open. It's open books with us, and we'll kind of get into it as well. But my special guest today is the CEO of Uncoached Corp, which is a company for a kind of a holding company for a website portfolio consisting of content-based properties. So we may talk a little bit about that, real estate and land investment. He's also engaged heavily in business consulting, one-on-one consulting, as well as speaking. He's a great speaker. If you're looking for somebody to come in and motivate the daylights out of you, this is the guy to do it. He loves people, but he never wanted a boss. We're going to talk a bit about what that really meant to him and how that kind of steered his career after kind of 6 years actually working for a boss. And I think that there's some good lessons to be picked up here by finding your purpose and actually doing something about it, taking action about it as well. And let's see, my special guest also began the journey we're going to talk about in digital media with the creation of one website, and that portfolio grew to 25. And so we'll kind of talk about what some of that means. But without further ado, I'd like to reveal the name of my special guest, Mr. Nat Berman. Nat, welcome to the program.
Thanks a lot, Brett. Appreciate it.
Great to have you here, and happy Friday. You're coming to us from New York, is that right?
That's correct.
All right. Where in New York are you?
I live on Long Island, a town called East Northport.
Fantastic. Good. So that is great. So again, to those of you that are calling, we've already got some people tuning in here, so I'll give you a few minutes to do that as well. Nat, did I leave anything off in the intro that you'd like to highlight?
Nope. We're good. Thank you.
Fantastic. So why don't we just kind of kick this off a little bit? You're LinkedIn. You're quite active on LinkedIn, and your kind of header in your profile talks about that you're uncoachable. Where did that name come from? Tell us. I'm sure there's a purpose for all of that as well. Tell us a bit about what uncoachable is.
So uncoached is actually it's sort of a made-up word that began on my JV basketball team. So this is 1994.
Yep.
And we had a coach who was very tough, and he yelled a lot, but he was also a great coach. And just one day, me and my buddies just kind of looked at him. We were just like, this guy's uncoached, and we just said that word, like, he's uncoached.
Yeah.
And I guess when you say it enough, it just sort of it feels right. And oddly enough, now, um, oh, Brett, I don't have you on the left side anymore. But anyway, um, so nowadays I kind of like to refer it. There we go. Now I see it. I kind of like to refer to it as a sort of almost an unlearning of a lot of the things we've been taught, a lot of the things that we've been, I hate to use the word programmed, but
Mm-hmm.
influenced to believe um, that we can't do X, Y, and Z, that we shouldn't be able to do X, Y, and Z. And the reality is, I think the further we go along this journey here, people are starting to realize that, and by the way, not to say that you shouldn't work for someone or a company or anything like that, but it is to say that you can choose your own path. You can choose to do whatever it is you want to do, and you have the power to do that. And you really do need to, if you've been influenced and brought along this entire time to feel a certain way, never too late to unlearn that and go after what you want. So it just oddly enough happened to just be that word that just worked nicely in both realms. So that's kind of that's how that came about.
Yeah, that's
And then it was
fantastic.
a natural name for a website. So I started this website in '07, which is way different than it is now. Now it's just my company site and company name. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, very, very interesting, humble beginnings.
Yeah, so it started with one website, and then your portfolios, like maybe you could just spend a minute to share your top line view on what digital real estate is for those that don't know, and kind of your portfolio grew to what 25 or so of these websites, and
Yeah.
maybe
So
talk a bit about that to us. Yeah.
sure. So I started using that phrase digital real estate just to sort of have it be A, it's kind of catchy, and B, it's literally what it is a form of owning property just online.
Hmm.
And so the way I equate my business is very much the same way that a real estate investor would invest in a property. You buy a website, you manage that website just like an owner would manage a home. And the way you manage it or maintain it is by creating content and updating existing content, same as you would, a broken faucet or, creating additions to rooms or anything like that. And you're essentially maintaining it. And the way to maintain it is through that content. It's either hiring writers or writing it yourself and making sure that the site is updated. And it's very low maintenance once it's sort of up and running,
Hmm.
and the returns from it are generally very high, upwards of 20 to 25%, and
Wow.
that's literally just after purchase. That's if you do nothing different. And what's amazing is 10, 15 years ago. So today you can buy a website for approximately anywhere from 36 months to 45 months of earnings, which is a joke, right?
Yeah.
But 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you could buy it for like 12 months earnings. So your returns were like insane. That doesn't exist and probably will never exist anymore. So, but the term digital real estate really encompasses, I would stretch it to say online businesses. So
Hmm.
my business specifically are content-based websites that make money through display advertising and affiliate advertising.
Hmm.
That's a very specific niche, within digital real estate. But if you own an e-commerce website, that's digital real estate, right? If you own a membership website, that's digital real estate. A newsletter, a forum, anything that's online, I would consider to be a digital asset. I don't want to confuse it with things like Bitcoin or things like,
Mm.
the metaverse, virtual worlds, things like that. Yes, those are digital, but using the word real estate is awfully generous for those types of properties. This is really more of I would consider to be an asset class.
Hmm.
Um, Same as real estate, same as stocks, and it's already being commoditized. There are private equity funds that own, batches of websites, and that's exactly what I do. I have a portfolio of sites, just like anyone would own an apartment building or portfolio of of homes. Exact same thing. Exact same thing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I think, don't really. I know that I didn't really view it this way until meeting you. And if you look at, I think the world is now dealing with, the developed world is now dealing with inflation rates, right? And so the days of very low to zero interest rates are kind of past us now, and people are looking for return.
Yeah.
If you look at the risk of this stuff, Nat, that obviously you're evaluating as, you're talking about as an asset class, and the volatility of it, speculative assets, to contrast what you're talking about, things like Bitcoin, which has nothing to do with this stuff, the metaverse. You're talking about just classic websites. How is the kind of the risk return trade offs, the volatility with these assets?
I think that when you're in the business, the risk is minimal, right? Because you know what you're doing and you understand how it's done. But
Hmm.
the actual risk that one takes on when they purchase a website like this or they start a website like this, because that risk has grown considerably. It's gone in a different direction in the last 6 months,
Hmm.
and it always goes in a different direction. But the primary risk driver was always Google, right? Because a lot of these websites
Hmm.
do very well in search. So, for
Yep.
example, my websites get about 75% of their traffic from Google. So you have to rank for certain keywords in order to get traffic. That traffic is what's going to generate that revenue.
Hmm.
And if Google has some sort of algorithmic update, your traffic could go down 50% overnight, literally. That's rare, but it's a disclosure I always tell people, which it could happen. I've had sites get demolished by Google updates, and I've recovered from all of them. But it does happen. It can happen. It will happen. But like many other businesses, if you own a portfolio of 10 websites, you're going to derive most of your money from two or three. So it's like that 80-20 rule. 80% of your money comes from 20% of your assets. So it's very, very similar.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
in terms of risk, how is that different than, you know, an interest rate spike destroying, real estate home values? It's
Right.
not.
Hmm.
So there are factors in there that are out of your control. Um, what I love about websites is that there's no quick fix. If you want to start a website from scratch and you want to do it the right way, you got to give at least 6 months of creating content constantly, meaning every day, and making no revenue for 6 months every day. And even after 6 months, a good website will organically produce probably about 100 visits a day after 6 months. A
Hmm.
good website. I have one right now that's doing that. It just started to, go up with the whole hockey stick. But 3 years, 4 years, that's where it can do extremely well. I've at my peak, one of my websites was doing about 5 million visits a month, and that was all organic, started from scratch. And then I just started getting more into acquisitions about 3 years ago, where I decided, I don't want to take the time to build a website. I'd rather just buy it. And there's ups and downs to that, but mainly it's a patience issue, which I have none of.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
in terms of risk, there's risk in any business. Evaluations could go up. They could continue to rise over the next 5-10 years. But as it stands, the average website, as I said, even if you're going on the higher end, even if you're at 40 months revenue, you're still getting a 20 plus percent return. That's assuming that the website stays at its current revenue track, that it stays at its
Hmm.
current traffic levels, and that your cost to maintain it is moderate.
Right.
And that really shouldn't be an issue with most websites that are up for sale. What's starting to happen in the industry is there's not enough marketplaces to buy websites anymore. There's really only a few that are very, very popular. Um, I think the best way to do it is privately, but that's tough because that's work. That means you're actively reaching out to websites and trying to contact owners and seeing if they're willing to sell. That's creating an entire pipeline on your own, which is actually what I would recommend if you want to get the best deals. But If not, there's marketplaces out there where you can purchase websites, and
Mm-hmm.
it'll be interesting to see. I've actually been in pause mode, just kind of watching to see what happens with ChatGPT, because content creation now costs nothing. Um, I'm in a wait and see mode, which is a good thing because the sites are still earning. They still make money. I don't have to do anything. But yeah, it's been an incredibly generous business for me for literally 15 years now.
Hmm. That's fantastic. So, yeah, I think that's interesting. If people, you mentioned about the secondary market being thin, and this thing's not like bonds, not like uh, not liquid. Let's just put it that way. But it's highly specialized, and so if somebody
Yes,
wants to explore this asset class, that's something you can help them with.
I could. Yes, it's certainly something that um, I also have plenty of people that I know, plenty of courses I can recommend. So there are definitely ways to learn, and I could easily put someone on the path. Yeah,
Okay.
that wouldn't be an issue.
Okay, good, very good. Just let me go over here to the audience here. We have Dr. Riza Rahimi here from Iran, tuning in live from Iran. It's great to see you, Doctor. Thank you for taking the time here. We have Rick J from Missouri, who's on here live as well. We have Dusty Rose. Dusty, thank you for taking the time to tune in. We have somebody from Nashville, Tennessee here. Welcome aboard the program. We have Zarha Masavi here as well. Not sure where you're from, but it's great to have you here. And we have Sonal here. Sonal from the UK. Great to have you, Sonal. That's great. You're doing great work, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And we have Miracle. I hope I get this right. Amano Yesu from Nigeria here. So, Miracle, thank you for taking the time to join the program. We really appreciate that. Feel free to let us know if you have any questions so we move along. Nat, I'd like to talk a lot about your coaching business. If you're okay, we'll kind of get into that now. And you have developed what I love about your story. If I look at my career, most of my network knows this. I spent 30 years working in the international space, and in 2016 I left it and retired from corporate life, and now I'm kind of doing things as well. I had bosses all along the way. I had great bosses, had not so great bosses, people probably that you wouldn't really like working for. Some of the people that I worked for, I did not enjoy it. Other people, I loved it. But it was kind of like rolling dice, whoever your boss is going to
Yeah,
be. So I had to deal with that for 30 years, different countries, moving all over the place, and dragged my wife along with me. And it was choppy. Your experience after kind of 6 years, then discovering a way to let me. You could correct me if I'm wrong after I finish this, but better control your time with your family, the time you spend at work, working actually from home, um, is quite minimal compared to the average, person that's working in corporate. And then something like COVID comes along, it locks down the economy, people's lives are disrupted, and then it opens back up, and then people are now dealing with, should I commute, should I quit? You haven't had to deal with that. Maybe you could talk a bit about what it feels like for you and your family to live the outcome, and then we'll talk about the inputs that go into that. But maybe you could talk a little bit about what is it like to be able to work 3 to 4 hours a day from home, to be there for your kids, to spend time with your family, and to do a lot of things that a lot of people miss out on. And I know that, and we'll also talk about that you also help people to get into the type of to create the lifestyle that you've created.
yeah,
Correct me if I'm wrong on any of that, but that's what I'd really like to talk about.
sure. No, that's all pretty accurate. I was a recruiter by trade for a while. The
Hmm.
corporate life, I recruited all investment bankers and traders, and um, I just, for a good 6 years working for people just wasn't for me. And it had nothing to do with whether they were a good person or a bad person. I've had both. It was just, I just never liked authority, never wanted to work for anyone. And I never wanted anyone to be responsible for me except for me. And so, sort of took that leap, as I said, in 2007. And look, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, on day one, right? It doesn't work that way. You've got to bust your ass. You got to work really hard. Um, you know, just to get out of my job, I was working essentially full time when I got home. So that was probably 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then from 6 p.m. to the whatever wee hours in the morning, I was writing articles and trying to drive traffic to them. Um, so it was about, I'd say, 2 to 3 years, which I always try to advertise this. Like 2 to 3 years is nothing. Like a lot of young folks out there, they're like, "Oh man, 2 years," and it's like, dude, I'm 44 years old. 2 years, it's really not a lot. Yeah, and it's funny because I've come full circle in the sense that developing sort of this online presence and all that, it's a very similar trajectory, and you're busting your butt online to kind of build up that presence, and that takes time. But to get more to your question, it's amazing. It truly is. Sometimes it's amazing, sometimes it sucks. It's like life.
It's life, right? Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm going to sit here and say that, I'm living the dream by a lot of other people's definition, yeah, I am living the dream, but that doesn't mean that it's not a nightmare sometimes.
Right.
And it totally can be. But to have the flexibility, here's the thing: a lot of people who don't understand what it's like to work at home, they don't get it. So, like, my children will just walk into my office. It's just be like, it's like, "Hey, man, I'm working," or my wife will just literally walk into my office, and it's like that's not how it works, right? And so to sort of make that point of view known to other people is a complicated task. To a lot of times, people, when they know you work from home, it's like, it doesn't really work. You know what I mean? It's almost like in their head. It's like, when in fact, when you're an entrepreneur, you work really hard, and you bust your ass. So, like I said, for me, it was a good 2 to 3 years to really get to the point where then I felt I could scale and not necessarily spend more time. And then eventually, oh, so now, yes, closed door policy doesn't even work at home. Yeah, you're damn right. It does not work at home. So, but I will say this: it's a hell of a lot better than it's not, right? To know that I could go to my child's recital or something like that in the middle of the day, or take care of any kind of an emergency. Just there are at this point thousands of things, I'm guessing, that I've been able to do at times when, if I had a full-time job and I was commuting to Manhattan, that there's no way I would be able to do.
Right.
And that's an amazing thing. And I think one of the biggest things human beings want to have, and many don't, are choices, options, flexibility. And that's what working from home really affords you. It's not necessarily that it's not like I'm riding a canoe on the lake every day, and I'm, watching the sunset and flexing and saying, "Look at me, this is the life." But I can. And that right there is a mental shift and blessing to have. Is just, you've got that in your pocket. You know that you can at any time, and you can always return and catch up and do whatever you need to do. That's, to me, one of the greatest benefits. Taking a nap in the middle of the day. I couldn't do that at work.
Yeah, right.
I take naps every day at noon. Every single day, like clockwork, I'm taking a nap.
Probably helps your creativity a bit too, my friend.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I love it.
And, naps are healthy as long as you don't do it all day, right?
Look, I haven't set an alarm unless I really wanted to for myself, but I haven't needed to set an alarm in 15 years, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of these things that are just awesome. And then there's the fact that it's online. that adds another kind of level of coolness to me, because look, I can, like, when I go on vacation, I check my stuff. And because I like to, because I like what I do for a living, I enjoy my job. I like being able to do that. But it's just kind of cool knowing that, like, hey, I could check in from anywhere in the world. It takes me 10 minutes,
Yep.
and I know that, the ship is not sinking and everything is cool. I love that. I mean, I went on a cruise, for Christ's sake, and I was like able to check my stuff if I really needed to.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Hawaii over the summer, and I worked, but like, I worked when my family was asleep at 6 a.m. and they never knew I was working. So how does anybody lose in that situation? It's like, some people could say, "Oh, I can't believe you were doing that when you were in Hawaii." It's like, why not? What's the difference?
Absolutely.
If that's what I want to do. And I think that's the main tenet of working for yourself. It's like, I don't give a crap what everyone else says. Like, I'm going to do what I want to do. Same thing goes for, working on weekends. Like, I like what I do. I like my routine. Why would I want to break that up just because it's a Saturday? I don't. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
the more and more people are seeing that is possible, and I've been doing it longer than most, it's just very interesting to me, especially I think as we move forward. I happen to believe that the next 15 to 20 years is going to be likely, and this, I don't want to try to be an economist or project anything, but I do believe that economic inequality is only going to continue. I do believe that with things like AI and technology, that a lot of jobs will be lost. Doesn't mean that some won't be created as well, but I really believe that the word ownership is going to become way more important than ever. And whether that means a side hustle or having a massive company that you own yourself, it's like, okay, AI is great, but it's the people that own the AI that are really going to benefit from it, right? It's
Mm.
not necessarily those that are the little worker bees.
Right.
So, having said all that, I think there's a tremendous opportunity for people to not only do it, but for people like myself that can help people along the way and navigate through through how to do that from where they are now. That's something that I think is going to be important moving forward. Whether it's a high-powered executive who's like, I just want to spend more time with my family, or someone who's just really antsy to do something on their own.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, there's not much difference there. It's a desire to change,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's what's important.
Yeah, I think you're right. Hey, Nat, I don't know. Do you, just a quick pause here, and then I want to go back to the audience here, and then I want to
Sure.
comment on what you said. You just said a boatload there. Do you have at your disposal any headphones or anything? I'm getting a little bit of feedback. If you don't, we'll keep going because it's just more of an acoustic thing, I think. Otherwise,
Oh man,
you know what?
I have this like microphone thingy.
You know what? You know what? Let's keep going because
Okay.
everybody, based on the, it's fine. I was just more of a fine tuning thing rather than static on the radio.
No,
No
I hope
problem.
it comes out okay in the recording.
I think we are because we've got a lot of people engaging here. And I just like to, so we've had some great comments. I'd just like to acknowledge Bill Dolan. Bill, Nat and I both know you. Thank you for taking the time to tune in today. Really great that you could carve out the time here. We appreciate that. We have Dusty Rose. Dusty, you've made several comments here, and I agree with you. Nat is nailing it. He's speaking straight facts, and Ambreen, I know you've been doing this for roughly 7 years, something like that. And I had you on the program last week, and we talked about that. For those of you that are watching this now, go back and catch that as well. But Nat, I think that you said something that is important. And if I contrast the way that you're able to live today to the way that I live today, we both, I live a similar life to what you live. My portfolio is a bit different, but to get to this point, I did that grind that I talked about for 30 years, and I have no regrets. I loved it.
Yeah,
I built teams, and that's just, hey, we're different people. Now we happen
sure.
to kind of be working in the same space. I'm 58. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But what I'd like to talk about now, and I'd like for the viewers to kind of get this, that sure, people can learn from what I, Brett Packard, has done around leadership, culture, that type of thing. Totally different than Nat, what you're talking about here. Yet we're able to lead similar lifestyles right now, and
Sure.
and have maximum flexibility with what we do with our time. But you can accelerate the curve dramatically with people to get into this space that maybe they're not in this space right now and they want to get to this space. They want to have more versatility, more create more time, redeploy that time into other aspects of their life, be able to, if they go to Hawaii, they want to be able to check on their business at 6 in the morning, and then when their family wakes up, have breakfast with them and spend the day snorkeling, if they want to do that, right? um, you can.
We spend the day doing what my kids want to do. Let's just make that clear.
Here we go. And can do you have any examples of somebody that you've been able to take that's been in the grind, dealing with that commute, dealing with all this stuff, not had good time for their family? They get hold of you, or you get hold of them, it's probably more appropriate, and you run them through your I.S.E method. And how has their life changed? And have you been able to save them years with what their endeavor in reaching their endeavor? Does that make sense? The
Sure.
question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I
Over to
mean,
you.
you're
Yep.
basically talking about, client examples and case studies, and absolutely. I've worked with clients of all shapes and sizes, and
Yep.
um, I think one that's a pretty good example is actually one that I shared very recently. A man who was a lawyer for over 20 years, always had a desire to start his own real estate investment company, and through a lot of his contacts in real estate through law, it was always there. He just never did it. And I think he sort of puttered around with it for a long time, but he sought me out. It was actually through LinkedIn, and we started working together. And what I think is the amazing commonality between everyone, and it's part of what I teach people and, my method, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was amazing is that he was focused on just too much and trying to get it right. And the reality is my phone's ringing. Hold on. Let me
That's
just
all
turn
right.
that off. So what we did, we stripped back everything. And I said, all right, well, you want to start your own real estate investment firm. What have you done so far? What are you doing? What's been preventing you from getting to where you want to go?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it was just based around things that were, in my opinion, almost meaningless. He's like, oh, I have a website. It's not up. It needs to be perfect, and it needs to be this, and it needs to be that. My LinkedIn game is terrible. I need to do, and he just sounded so overwhelmed that I'm like, all right, that's fair enough. If you could tell me two things that you really, really need to do right now
Mm-hmm.
to get this thing running, what are they? And I already knew the answer, but he told me I need to raise money and I need to find sponsors for these deals.
Mm.
I said, okay, what have you been doing that? he's like, kind of. I'm like, no, kind of, not kind of. That's all you should be doing right now. Right.
Right.
And and the reason I bring up this particular story and results, here are the results,
Mm-hmm.
within 6 months, he's finally sourced his first deal. And it
Wow.
was something he'd been thinking about for years. And I still talk him to this day. I put 50 grand into that deal of my own money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's done another 4 since.
Wow.
Does it mean he
Yeah.
has this burgeoning, real estate company right now? No, he's still doing some of his law practice, but it's coming and it's working.
Yeah.
And so that's just one example. I had another guy who was at one of the major investment houses. He was a mortgage specialist, and he wanted to explore working with a different kind of clientele and just didn't have any time because he was inundated with all these people who had mortgages, and they were in a certain income level that he kind of wanted to move out of that and move into 7 and 8 figure homes for the mortgages that he was underwriting for people. And he was so easy, but in his mind, he was like, I can't do this. I'm doing this, that, and the other. And I said, okay, well, we're going to put all your resources to work with the company that you already have. And we're going to offload just about everything that you're doing off to someone else, because it sounds like you don't need. That's
Yeah.
essentially what we discovered. I said, how much of this stuff do you need to be doing yourself? He's like, not a lot. I'm like,
Mm.
here's your answer, And
Yeah.
again, it came down to a situation where it was 1, 2, 3 tops. And that's what I try to identify with every single client, is literally a few things that they should be doing. Because it's always a top level 1, 2, or 3 things to me that's going to dictate how well you do in a particular endeavor. And when you identify those, everything else just kind of goes off to the wayside, as it should. So
Yep.
that's kind of what happened there. And eventually he got to focus on those particular kinds of clients, had more time. He had a position where he was able to work at home. So the results were more time spent with family, able to make the same amount of income off of less deals, hence more time, because these were higher level clients, bigger
Yeah.
mortgages,
Mm.
better commissions.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that exist, they happen. And I just love taking on, stories and people that want to shift their life into a different perspective. And a lot of it is about perspective. So
Yeah.
um,
Those are great,
I don't know, I hope that
great
answers your question.
outcomes. I mean, those are
Yeah.
fantastic outcomes. That's a great, great response to the question. And basically, helping somebody get control of their life and focus on the things that are going to get them where they need to go. And I run across a lot of people as well in my business that it's like nailing jelly to a wall. Is that if you're doing too much of this stuff, it's just
Yeah.
not you're just not gonna be happy and get there. Tell us a bit more about, now that you've talked about the outputs, the kind of the inputs to this, your I.S.E model. It's proprietary. You developed it. And if I understand this correctly, Nat, because I see you talking about elements of this all the time, is that it can apply to nearly anything, right? It can apply to if you want to get healthier, or it can apply to
Yeah.
if you want to do the things that you talked about in those couple of excellent examples. Talk to us a little bit more about the inputs.
Sure.
Yep.
So the method I have is called I.S.E. I just like to call it I.S.E because it
Yep.
sounds cool, but
Yep.
it really stands for I.S.E, which is identify, strategize, and execute.
Mm-hmm.
And look, it's not as though I'm reinventing the wheel here. These are concepts that I think have existed through time in terms of problem solving and um, moving from A to B. But at the same time, I think what's interesting and beneficial is that, as you said, it is a universal type of formula, meaning whether it's you want to change jobs or you want to have a better relationship, you want to get healthy, whatever it is, you need to identify, what the situation is, what the problem is, everything surrounding that problem, what the challenges are. And when you've identified all that, then what do? You have to come up with a plan. That's the strategy part. So that's why it's universal. How is that different for someone who's trying to achieve maximum health as opposed to someone who just wants to get out of the 9 to 5? It's not different.
Right.
And so the strategy part is coming up with that plan. For me personally, with everyone I work with, it's the same thing. It's identifying some of the core components of what needs to change and what needs to be focused on. And generally, as I said, so far, everyone I've ever worked with, it's never been more than, I think, 4 things was the max. It was never more than 4 things that we really, really wanted to hit on and hit on them hard. Yes, eventually you're going to have your sub levels and subheadings within those 4 areas. But if you want, maximum impact and change in the quickest way possible, and when I say quick, I mean 6 months to a year. I don't mean,
Mm-hmm.
2 days. Okay. So for anyone who's looking for a quick fix,
Right.
go to a different podcast, go to a different live, go somewhere else. But
Right.
The reality is, without fail, it's always been a core competency of a few things.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally is the execution part. And I think that's where people need a coach or a mentor or
Yep.
whatever title you want to use. That's where they need it the most. because not everybody has the ability to be accountable to themselves.
Right.
And accountability is the key element within any type of execution model, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not accountable, you're not going to get it done. And just like a trainer who's telling you to do another rep, a coach is there to sort of push you forward and get you there. But ultimately, that's not necessarily my goal. My goal is to get someone to be able to do that for themselves. But in the beginning, depending on someone's personality, and again, this takes place in the initial sort of screening or call when you get to know someone. There are some people that need a drill sergeant. Some people need that, right? Some people need,
they do.
Get your ass up. I don't care what you say. Let's go. Some people need more of their hand being held. That's a personality issue.
Right.
But the core message is the same. It's being pushed, right? It's going to a level that is there, but you don't necessarily see it yet, and someone else does, and they know that you're capable of doing that. And I think that's the most important part when it comes to execution, is pushing them to levels that they haven't seen. Mm-hmm. And that's typically what I specialize in. My ideal client, the people I work with most, are people that already have all that, and they don't even realize that there's another level that they can reach. And those are the most fun people to work with. It's those that are already motivated, that are already kicking ass, that already are successful, that know how to make money. Guess what? They don't necessarily have the lifestyle. They're not necessarily spending, enough time with their families. They're not necessarily doing the things they want to do on a weekend or a weekday. And a lot of times it's a few simple shifts that need to take place. But those shifts have been evading them for years and years and years because of the lifestyles that they already lead. And once you start kind of turning those on their heads, a whole new world kind of opens up. And I myself have experienced that. I work with a coach. I work with a coach right now. P.S. For anyone who's watching, if you ever want to hire a coach, don't ever hire one that's never had a coach before. I can tell you that right now. That's a bad idea. Or if they haven't had a coach before, I hope that they're like the founder of whatever method that they have, and they're damn good at it. But just like I would never tell someone to see a therapist unless that therapist has already been through therapy.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of how it all works. And it's equally interesting for every person, to figure out what their problem is and how to get them to shift. But I think, again, a key tenet of all this, a very important piece of assisting and helping people, achieve what they want to achieve, a huge component is that from the get-go, it's to make them understand that they're the ones that are going to be doing it. It's not me. I'm just helping them unlock some stuff that's already there, that they are already capable of.
Yep.
It's just that they either haven't seen it yet, or they've been literally blinded by all of those outside factors that have been, contributing to the delay. So yeah, that's essentially it in a nutshell.
I think you're right. And, I think that based on my experience of working with similar people is that oftentimes what I see is that, you're pointing out why positive thinking doesn't work. A lot of people are preached to positive thinking and made all these promises that'll turn your life around. And, you say this every morning when you get up, but without that action and that execution, sorry, folks, the ball doesn't get in the net. And you've got to, and sometimes you've got to have help to get you along that curve. Or, as we spoke about earlier, maybe to shave years off of what it would take you to figure out if you don't have somebody like Nat. And that's where he and this I.S.E can really help you accelerate that curve and hope probably shave years off of trying to figure out how to do it yourself, right? Hire somebody that's already done it.
Look, the coach I worked with, and I can tell his name. His name's Fraser Cameron. He's on LinkedIn, all the way in New Zealand. Guys, sits in flip flops, and he's like me when I take my videos in the backyard. Very similar from a very similar cloth. And I remember when I was working with him, he sort of I say that he Miyagi'd me, because there were all these things that were already in my head, and he he just encapsulated in one word. I was like, oh yeah, and it's these eureka moments that I think the right person can help you with. That you're like, man, why haven't I been doing it that way this whole time? And when you click with the right person, those are the moments that you have, and it's very empowering when you do have it, and the results generally do come pretty quickly once you have those realizations. It's just unfortunate that people spend years and years and years without even opening themselves up to that possibility.
Right.
But I'll always say that's not my problem.
No, I hear you.
I can only encourage those to sort of seek me out, or I'll seek out those that I see don't see it. That does happen as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are a lot of people I know as well that, they take a lot of action. Okay. Maybe they're a positive thinker, but they get no traction, and they wonder why aren't I getting traction? And sometimes people find, especially in leading large teams, that they're actually trying too hard. And so there's, a bit of and this is where kind of a coach can, get you to stop trying to nail that jelly to the wall and figure out, okay, what's important? What are the 3 maximum 4 things, to your point, that you need to work on in order to, start to get that traction as well. Baby, thank you. Saying take always action towards your goals with the right sufficient information. Yeah, that's important. Information is critical in this world. Nat, how do you get your information to a changing world? There's a lot of it out there. A lot of it, some of it's news, some of it's opinion, most of it's opinion, actually, in the United States, my opinion. How do you know what to rely on? What's your process for getting information as you are helping others?
I would say a lot of the information that I have is based on a lot of the experiences I've had myself. I think that's important in terms of like, am I doing research, and am I think a lot of the information is already out there within the people themselves. I think a lot of the answers already exist within the clients. It's a matter of learning what their situation is. In terms of how I get my message, I'm not sure what was the question. How do I you said, how do you get your information out there? I mean, do you mean
how do you know what to rely on in order to take something forward, right? A lot of noise out there it's overly crowded, it's biased, all that stuff, right?
What's true and what isn't?
Right. There you go.
That's a tough one. That's a great question. I think that's more of an existential question almost than anything. We've been through some crazy times, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, and we don't know who to trust or what to trust, and that's difficult. I look for. It's funny. I always go back to dating profiles as this little trick, right? So a long time ago, I met my wife through an online. I met her through JDate years and years and years ago. And when you're on a dating website long enough, you know which profiles are fake and you know which ones are real. You know which ones where you're like, you see that picture? Well, that's not their whole body, or no way. That was taken 15 years ago. Eventually, you can spot a fake profile in 2 seconds. I view LinkedIn very similarly. I can spot a bullshitter in 2 seconds on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Because when you've been on there long enough, you can. And I think it's a matter of exposure, right? I mean, if you're on Twitter long enough, you're going to see who the scam artists are and who the real people are. And I think that also, unfortunately, that's getting a bit harder these days. But I can tell you right now, I haven't really followed the news in over a year. I've been way happier for it. It doesn't mean I don't know what's going on in the world. It means that I'm not going to get sucked in and watch things for 45 minutes that makes me feel like my entire world is over and crumbling. the power lies within yourself, and it always has. And I think that that's the message. That's the real message, is that when you understand that you're the one who's got the capability to do all that, you don't have to rely on all these other things.
Yeah.
I think self-reliance is the most powerful one that there is.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that you don't want help. Doesn't mean that you can't require the assistance of other people, because that's really important as well. But it does start from the individual. It does start from your own internal, mechanism.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as far as what's true and what's not, I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
Who knows? Maybe we are living in the Matrix, but so what? You can still do what the hell you want within the Matrix. Like, that's what's funny about all these people that say, are we living in a simulated world? Yeah. Do we have free will?
Right.
Maybe not, but I sure feel like I do. So that's my reality, and I'm going to live it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. I had a one of my mentors during my time in the UK. He had a great tool for getting news. He said, "Talk to the taxi driver; they know everything," and that's true. He's so right about that. Right? I remember flying into Cairo, Egypt, one morning when I lived in the Middle East, and flew in, arrived at 4 a.m. The driver picked me up, and I said, "So you've got elections coming up? What's going on?" He said, "We're going to overthrow the government." And, that was literally 6 months before they overthrew Murabik. The people on the ground know what's going on. People on TV, they're painting opinions. And I'm with you. I just don't watch the stuff on TV. So limit your consumption, rely on who probably knows really what's going on the ground. If we're living in the Matrix, we're living in the Matrix. But don't get my advice would be, just don't get too consumed with any one source, because that's where the mistake is made. Because what if you're wrong, or what if they're wrong, right? Anyway, get a coach. Get a coach. Hey, so Nat, I want to talk briefly. You did a post the other day that I thought was great. And I said, I'm going to ask him about apathy and wasted talent. Okay.
Sure.
I think I responded to that, talked about quiet quitting, these, for whatever reason is going on, crappy leader, whatever, but nothing is more heartbreaking. Maybe I'll let you talk about it than wasted talent. Could you do a little rant, and maybe I'll tag on to what you're talking about
Sure,
as well.
We'll do a video. We'll edit it, and we'll do another video.
That's right.
My video. For those watching, or for those who don't know, it's a line from the movie Bronx Tale, which was a fantastic movie. And Robert De Niro says it to his son, and there's nothing worse than wasted talent, and that's kind of the theme throughout the movie. And it's, to me, wasted talent is very much related to this feeling of what could have been. And those are my least favorite phrases in the world: could have, would have, should have. Nothing bugs me more than those. But the issue with wasted talent, it's almost like there's so much talent out there. It's not even that it's being wasted. It's not even being tested. It's not even being tried. And that's what I have a very big issue with. And that's where the word apathy comes in. Is that for some reason, somehow, in some way, many, many people have gotten in their heads that it's okay not to try. Or if it's okay not to try, to expect something for doing nothing.
Right.
And I think, I don't want to go on too much of a whole Gen Z millennial rant, but I want to bring it up only because it's pertinent here.
Mm-hmm.
Gen Z and millennials aren't lazy.
No.
Lots of people are lazy in every generation. I think Gen Zs and millennials are smarter than all of us.
Yep.
Okay. But that doesn't mean there's a massive cohort that is lazy, that isn't motivated, that doesn't want to do things. But that's every generation. Those exists all over.
Right.
Exist all over.
I know a lot of them. Yep.
Sure. And I'm trying to make sure my kids don't become those people. Right. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, I do think it comes from, look, as a parent, certainly starts from when your little ones are born, and a culture that you raise your children with, a culture that you grow up in. I think when it comes to corporate and company culture, definitely starts from leadership. You know, trying to cultivate a culture of working hard, of winning. And when I say working hard, it doesn't mean working 15 hours a day. It means working efficiently, working smart, putting all your effort into the moments that you're in. It doesn't mean you have to be there from morning until night. It means you have to do it smart. And some of the positive things I'm seeing when it comes to this is that people are learning to be more efficient. They are learning to use their talents in very quick and efficient ways, and they're able to generate incomes. And to those sort of, get off my lawn people who are like, I don't like this generation because they're lazy and they're this and they're that. Well, let me ask you this, Mr. white collar tie wearing suit guy. What would you rather do when you're 25 years old? Make 100 grand, knowing that if you just put in a year of really hard work, you can actually make a 6-figure income online, not have a boss, have a flexible lifestyle? Or would you rather spend 3 to 5 years to build up to that 100K, working 12, 14 hours a day for some maniacal person?
Yep.
Where you have absolutely zero control whatsoever, and you're at the whim of the company, or at the whim of that person. What's smarter? It's a hell of a lot smarter doing the former than the latter. And so, but you're not going to do it unless you do it. You're not going to get there unless you do take that action. And that, I think, is where there's a huge disconnect it's not just this generation or this time in history. It's in human beings in general. I think the problem is everyone's out for a quick fix. Yeah. Why do you think so many people buy lottery tickets, right? You got to make your own lottery. I use the phrase, build your own table, right? It's you don't have to seek out anything other than your own thing. And for whatever reason, those are things I can't go into because I don't know the full answer. But for whatever reason, so many people just have it backwards, in the sense that it's got to be handed to me, or
I need it now. Faster. Need it now. Yep.
Need it now. Yep. Instant gratification. Talk about gratification. It's so much more gratifying when you've done what you can do to get it. That it's the whole the journey is better, right? Like, I'm always happier in building mode, always, every single time. Like, and why fight that? I used to fight it a lot. I was looking for the outcome, when in reality, nothing makes me more excited. The best day I've ever had in my whole career to this day is the first time I made $5 from Google AdSense, because that was the day I was like, holy shit, I can do this. Like, I know that 5 is going to be 5,000 someday, but damn, it's going to be fun getting there.
Yeah.
It's like a light switch goes off, and that to me is my dopamine hit, right? It's like when those light switches go off. So when I'm done with something, I get bored real fast. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. And I wish people could feel that more. And in my opinion, they can. They just haven't been properly programmed how to do so.
No,
or rather unprogrammed.
I mean, getting it. You're right. Getting in that flow and getting in that groove. I don't know what the right word for it is, but having that feeling, right, of doing it that way. There's not another feeling like it, is there? I mean, it's not, and it's not. Oh, I made it to the top of the mountain. It's not that. It's what you felt like getting there, and those milestones along the way. And it's hard to describe. I don't have a word for it, but
it is hard to describe. It's like when I was in Hawaii, a great example would be, there was this thing we were going up. It was like 2 miles or something, and it was me and my kids and my wife, and we're walking up it. And or what's even a funnier example? A funnier example is the Grand Canyon. That's a great example. Grand Canyon, like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, Vacation.
Oh yeah,
Chevy Chase.
Chevy, yep.
And remember when he looks at the Grand Canyon, and it's like 2 seconds, and then he leaves. Like, I remember going to the Grand Canyon, And I remember that before the Grand Canyon, about a half an hour, we saw this big IMAX film of the Grand Canyon, and it was like amazing. It was like one of the first times I saw an IMAX film.
Yeah.
It's like 30 years
IMAX is
ago.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially with like nature and all that stuff. It's like soaring at Disney World. Anyway, so like you're watching this thing, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. You see people hiking and these beautiful sceneries and mosaics and all this stuff of the Grand Canyon. And then I went to the Grand Canyon, and in my head, I couldn't help but be like, this kind of sucks, which is hilarious because it's Jesus Christ, it's the Grand Canyon I'm looking at, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is, the second I saw it, within 30 seconds, I'm like, okay, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Now I want to go in there. I want to explore it. I want to see what it's like. So it's like you reach that mountaintop and you're like, yeah. So and I'm not saying that the Grand Canyon isn't majestic and glorious and beautiful and all these things. But for someone like me, and it sounds like someone like you as well,
it's a great example.
Whether that's Type A or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
Those things never seem to last. They never seem to last. And I've learned to deal with that. I'm not going to celebrate my wins for so long. I'm going to get back in the gym, and I'm going to keep working because it's that feeling of the possibility of it happening. I always say to people, for some reason, you're way more excited on the way, to reaching that mountaintop than when you get there. It's just it's way more exciting and fulfilling. And I think it's because when you get to the mountaintop, there's nothing left to do. And the doing is really the enlightening part that gives you that energy, that spark where you feel it in your chest. You're like, oh, this is so exciting. Whereas letdown is the wrong word, but there is a slight disappointment because it's over, and yes, you were victorious and you got what you wanted and you did all that stuff, but nobody likes when something good is over. Right? Nobody likes when that challenge is over. At least I know I don't.
No, it's exactly right. A lot of people criticize these great sports. The latest, maybe Patrick Mahomes, right? Who's just an amazing athlete. Why does he get paid all that money? Well, he doesn't think about that money that he's getting paid, by the way. He wants to get out there and win and he loves the game. If he hurts his ankle, he's going to get out there. He's not thinking about, well, am I going to make this $500 million, 3 years from now if I get out there and play? I'm going to get out there and play right now because I love this game. I'm going to play in pain, and I'm just going to get it done. He's not thinking about dollar signs. Maybe the owner of his team is, right? And that type of thing. And maybe the coach is, but the player, he wants to get out there because he knows what it feels like, that intensity and that, I don't know, flow. Maybe we can think of a word for this.
There's another quote that I love. Joe Pesci said it in the movie With Honors: "Winners forget about the race; they just love to run."
Exactly, and that's really what it's all about, right? So
I love that quote, and it's so true. You
get
so immersed and so focused on it that everything else just is blurry.
That's right. Nat, we're running out of time. Any parting words of advice? We covered a lot of real estate today. Digital real estate, and especially your I.S.E. Anything you want to get in here before we sign off about maybe your speaking? I know you're a speaker as well. Anything you want to say about that?
If you like what you hear, contact me. That's really it. I get back to people very quickly and love communicating, and don't waste my time, and I won't waste yours. So that's the best thing I could say. I appreciate everything, Brett. It's been great.
Best way to get hold of you, I think you're on pretty much all the main digital platforms. I know you're on LinkedIn, you're on Twitter, Insta, Facebook.
Yeah, but that's like more personal stuff.
More second. Okay.
Not too.
So LinkedIn
on there, but if you go on LinkedIn and look at my profile, you could find everything.
Yeah. LinkedIn is the fastest route to being able to hire you, right? Basically, get into LinkedIn. They can. I know it's really easy for those of you watching that haven't checked out Nat's profile. There's a little click up there at the top of his profile that takes you straight into his to sign up for his newsletter, which you have to get. That's an awesome newsletter. I love it. And then follow him every day for 90 seconds worth of wisdom every day via video.
Yeah, I do one
Yeah.
video post, one text post every day,
Yeah.
8 a.m., 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, and
Yep.
that's it.
Great.
Yep.
So there you go. Nat, I'd like to thank you for your time. Appreciate it very much. The wisdom. Congratulations to you and your family on living a great dream, because I think that's really what you're doing. You had to work really hard to get there, and you haven't let up. That's obvious in the past hour, and I think that it's wonderful that you're also selfless and you're teaching others how to live in the same space. And I think that's really wonderful. You're a great man. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Brett.
You
Really do
betcha.
appreciate it. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
And I'd like to thank all of you for engaging with us, tuning in. I know that there'll be at least 2,000 or 3,000 that see this on replay. So please tee up anything that you want to know that we didn't talk about, and would be very happy to. So, and I'll look forward to seeing all of you next time.